Hi friends, and welcome to my weekly stream about the Uno platform, where I do some live coding about what's happening with the Uno platform, looking at issues, looking at PRs. My name is Jérôme Laban, and I will be your host for this 1 hour session. Today we're going to be taking a look at one issue that has been raised on the Uno platform project, which is related to some Roslyn Analyzer. And we're going to be taking a look at this and see how we can troubleshoot that feature. So if you want to take a look at other issues as part of the project, you can base your investigation on what we're going to be doing. I'm trying out a new setup with some green screening behind, so it should be looking a bit better than the previous streams that I was doing. So hopefully that'll look a bit better. So let's go to some live coding. So the issue that was opened was about an analyzer that we have when building an Uno application. Hey Darren, no, I have not finished the code for the playground. I actually wanted to do it live so that we can see how we can do that kind of integration. So if you can, you'll be able to see it in live while I'm doing it. So let's take a look at that issue. So when we're building something, there's an issue in Uno that we haven't fixed yet, which is that if you're trying to do some bindings on a class that doesn't have a code behind, or doesn't have the type code behind defined in code behind, then there should be a warning showing up. So let's go take a look at this one specifically. So it's going to be called bug 1826. So let's try to repro first. And the issue says that when building Cia.wpf, the warning does not show up, and when building another head, let's say WebAssembly or other, then the issue is showing up at that time. So let's see if we can actually reproduce this in the right context. So to reproduce the issue, we have to create actually we can probably just modify the main page, but we have to make something like this. So when you have a code behind in a XAML page, there's generally a double definition of the page, the base class. So in this case, we have main page, and then we say column page, so that we specify the base type for the main page. But if we do this, it'll still work. But the problem is that inside of Uno, there are some things that we're not doing yet that makes it that the code generator is not able to determine the type of main page, because the source is actually defined here. So what we're doing is to notify the developer that there may be an issue, that the base type needs to be defined. We actually show an error or a warning that says, if you try to do this, then you have to specify the type, otherwise some errors may occur. So there you go. So that error is here. So warning uxaml 0002, and it says main page doesn't explicitly define the page base type in code behind. And there are some other related issues that, for instance, if you're trying to do some X-binds on it, then the type will not be defined properly, and it will fail for other reasons, especially if you're using a user control from another page, for instance, that can fail. So that error, that warning should be happening in all cases. It should be visible everywhere, but it would seem that with building the WPF host, that warning is not visible. So we're going to try to figure why it doesn't happen. So let's build a WPF host and see if we get that warning. And we're not getting the warning. So that's not good. So we're going to try to troubleshoot and why that warning would not happen for that specific head. I'm assuming that it would be working with WebAssembly. So let's try to figure if it happens there. Okay, so it happens for WebAssembly. It doesn't happen for GTK, but not for WPF. So we're going to try to troubleshoot why. So first, we're going to try to find this one specifically. So if you don't know where to find that, one of the best thing to do is just search for a string inside of the Uno solution. So we're going to be opening the net standard 2 because it's the we're going to be overriding the target framework so that we don't have too much time spent in Visual Studio trying to open the two large sources. So in this case, it's net standard 2. We're also going to be changing the version number to match the one that's in the project. So we're going to be overriding Uno. So actually, let's use a later version. It's going to be easier this way. We're going to be using the latest dev. You could just announce that they are going to be enabling two-factor authentication for NuGet providers. So that's going to be interesting for security. Shouldn't be changing anything for consumers, but it'll be useful for everyone else. Okay. So that we're increasing the security to make sure that we're not spending we're not having people that are hijacking accounts and publishing NuGet packages where it shouldn't be. Okay, so we're at Uno 200, 100. Okay, so 420.100. So I'm going to be overriding for that version. Let's open the Skia solution filter so that we only build for this one. Okay. So in this case, what we're looking for is the use YAML warning message. So if we go back to the output here for the build output, use YAML 002. And it's found in the XAML code generation diagnostics. And we're going to try to find the locations of the actual use locations of that one, of that diagnostic descriptor. So Visual Studio is just starting up, so it's filling up the references. If it's taking too long, we're going to do a text search instead. Okay, so it's used at one location. And it says try generate warning for inconsistent base type. So the easiest way to hook onto the analyzer and try to debug it is to set a property. And that property can be found when we're looking at the XAML generator here. You have the code generation. And in the code the startup of the code generation, there's a Uno UI source generator debugger break. And if you set that to true in your project, then you're going to have the debugger that's going to pop up and ask you to attach a debugger so you can go and debug debug the analyzer. So let's do this. So if I build again, so you've seen that I've built the Uno solution and the source generators, and it overrode the version that I have inside of Visual Studio, inside of that Visual Studio, and now I can hook onto the instance that I have for Visual Studio here. So the interesting thing here is that it's not allowing me to select that Visual Studio for some reason. So we're going to create a new one. So let's go for 2022, this one. We have to try again because it should have been allowing me to select this instance of Visual Studio, so it's probably something else. But anyways, so once the debugger is opened, we should be able to hook onto the sources and see where we can go. So it looks like it's not liking this very much. So let's try again. So the small one. Okay, so let's build again and see if we can get the debugger to attach at the right location. So it looks like it didn't like very much being killed there. So let's do a task kill because there are too many. Okay, so the build is cancelled. So we try again. Should be getting the pop-up to attach to a debugger. Still not there, so we're going to try with another version of Visual Studio. So I'm taking the preview this time. Let's see if it hooks onto something better. It looks like it is. Okay, much better. So we're going to be stopping inside of the XAML source generator. There we go. So we're at the right location. So now what we're going to do is open the file where we had the try generate warning for inconsistent base type. And we're going to put the breakpoint in that method and see if we have something that is of interest. So let's see. Okay, so I've continued the debugging, and now we're going to take a look at the different types that we're getting. So it looks like we're parsing the app.xaml in that context. So we can see here it's full class name, it's app. So that's not the one we're looking for. Main page. Okay, so we have main page in that context, and we're going to try to see if those two should be matching. So what we're saying is that if the type defined in the XAML and the class that we tried to find, if they're the same, if they are not the same actually, then we should be raising the warning. So in that case, they're effectively different because the type that we found in the XAML is Windows UI XAML control page, but the class defined base type is object. And there's a good reason for this, that we're inside of a generator and the source code that has been written by the user is not yet having the generated code. So because by default, the generated code is going to be creating the base type based on what's inside of the XAML. So we're talking about this one. That partial class that will be generated is not getting that page. That class is going to be generated after we can analyze it. So that means that at the current time when we're trying to guess the active type for the class that we got, we don't have any base type, so it says that it's object. If we were to specify the base type inside of the code behind, then we would have the right type defined here. But in this case, it's not the same, so we should be having something that gives us a proper warning. And in that case, we have one warning, and it says, it gives us the actual source location. So it says mainpage.xaml.cs line 23. We're really generating the diagnostics and reporting it to the context. So that should be working. And that means that there's something else that is not working properly. So we can see here that it's not reported in any way, even if we have added the generator context report diagnostic. So for some reason, there's something that removes the diagnostics from being shown. So we're going to try to find which one. So if that doesn't work, that means that it may not be the generation that doesn't work. It could be something else in Visual Studio that's causing this. So let's go and use the build logging tooling. So this tooling is something that you can find in extensions here. It's called Project System Tools. See here. Project System Tools. Yeah, there it is. Project System Tools 2022. So you can install that one, and it will give you the build logging window that you can find in View, Other Windows, Build Logging here. And then if you press Start, what happens is that when you're building something, you're going to have a new file that's going to be generated that will give you a lot of details with regards to what the build was doing and what it reported and things like that. So that's what we're going to try to find and why we're getting that there. So no need to touch the debugger at this time. So we're going to be looking at the build logging tooling this time. So we're going to be right-clicking on that rebuild, which finished and worked properly, but didn't raise any warning. And we're going to search for the CSC task. That task is going to give us the details about what happened. And for some reason, it's not giving us that much of an output here. So we have analyzers. We have UNO analyzers here that are defined. Are there disable warnings? So we have warnings disabled here, but not the one that we're talking about. The language version is 7.3. I wonder if that has an impact. It shouldn't be, but still is the case. So we could probably take a look at something else. So let's see. Let's see if we change this to a later language version. Maybe we should be doing this by default. So let's go to 10 and see if that changes anything. So we can remove the debugger break here. Still not doing anything there. I wonder if there's somewhere else that we can try to troubleshoot this. I know there's a tab for code analysis, so maybe it's caused by this somehow with .NET analyzers. So this one is not exactly the one we want. So that's first party .NET Analyzer, so that's not really the one we need. But let's the set of analyzers that should be run on the project. So that's all of it. Actually, let's run others to see if we can find something different. Maybe there's something else that's not working properly, and we may get additional warnings. So no, we're not getting any warning here. The error list. Do we have additional warnings there? We don't have any warnings as well. That's very interesting. So we have code styling, experimental here. Probably not that useful either. It's probably going to give us a ton of things, but no, it's not. Still not doing anything. Okay. Maybe there's a way to have the rule sets enabled. So let's see. I don't recall if that rule set is available somewhere. We can't create one here. So let's see. I think we can disable some rule sets manually. Let's change that one here. So if we say that one is an error, it should be creating a file somewhere, but I don't know if it's at the level of the application or if it's so it's not in here. So that changed quite a bit in the previous in current versions of Visual Studio. So maybe there it is. Okay, so we have the editor config that was defined here. That's the solution item, and it shows, can tell you, if I remember correctly, if some of the warnings that you're defining are available or not. So let's open it as text for now. See if we can find something. Okay, editor config didn't like it. Maybe a preview issue. Oh, it's not XML. Okay, so let's see. Let's see if I use this one instead. So it's supposed to be UXAML. So if I say that UXAML severity is error, do I get the error here? No, I don't get any error. I start to think if that is a Roslyn issue and not an UNO issue. and try to fill a little bit more with it, but if it doesn't give us anything, we're gonna have to go and try to do a second topic with the Uno playground. Let's try the last one. We're opening the file generator again. This is a different instance of Visual Studio. And report diagnostics is supposed to be doing something. Yeah, that one goes inside of Roslyn, so it's not particularly useful in that context. The report diagnostics is not giving us anything specific, so we get the diagnostics that are integrated at the right place and marked as a warning. Actually, we could probably try to do something a bit different. So let's say that we change the diagnostics and say that by default it's an error. We could probably see if so it's supposed to be enabled by default, but if we set it as an error, so let's see if it changes something. We may need to restart the app. I'm not so sure yet. We'll see. Well, let's restart it because sometimes Visual Studio doesn't pick up changes. So just as an abundance of caution. I don't know. So from the people that are listening right now, are you developing your own analyzers with using Roslyn? Do you find them useful? I find them quite useful in many cases. The only thing that I would have liked to have is some kind of an opt-in per file in a sense, so that you can incrementally enable it, not have just a big bang thing about analyzers. You can disable everything at once, but you have to enable. You have to make a giant file of exclude so that the build can pick them up one by one. Okay, so let's see if we can get that to error out. Okay, so if it is an error, it works. But if it is a warning, it doesn't work. It doesn't show up. That is quite interesting. So maybe there's something in the input that I didn't see before. Let's see. So if I build, so let's put it back to warning. Maybe there's an option in the Roslyn compiler that says, disable warnings for some reason. That is enabled specifically for this target, but not the others. So that will do. Let's restart for this instance specifically. And we're going to go and record the build logging here and see if we can get something better. Hi, McNits. Hey, Chris. Okay, so we're building. And do we get a warning again? Okay, so it's still an error this time. So that's interesting. So I changed it, but for some reason this one is still defined as an error. So I wonder if it's Visual Studio that is being, so it may have stored something in another version. So let's see. Just going to be killing MS build. So there's no MS build. So let's see. Did I miss something? If it still shows an error, it's because I marked it as a warning, the warning as error. So it actually shows as a warning this time. So this time it shows that way because it's defined in that file. So that makes sense. So let's see, let's revalidate if it's that case, if it is the case. So if I build, now the warning happens. Okay, so there's something odd there. So could it be? Could it be a debug thing? That would be interesting. So if let's say if I go back one version of Uno, so we're having the 200 100 here. So if I go back one version, so we're saying maybe not this one. I'm gonna have to change that one. It takes a bit of time. So 83. 83. So this one is not was not overridden. So that means that if I build it, I will use the let's say off-the-shelf version of Uno. So it should, if everything goes well, should not show anything. And now it does. Okay. So we didn't have anything when we started. Or maybe it's that version. It's probably because of that version, because it bumps up. Let's see. Okay, so that's interesting. Now it's doing it every time. So could it be because there's an editor config file? Starting to be curious there. So let's say I remove the editor config file completely. Still there. Okay. So maybe there's something else that I don't see. WPF. So if I remove this again and this, maybe there's going to be something else. No, it's still there. So it looks like I changed something that kind of enabled it. Oh, there you go. So it's gone. Okay, so I changed one of those yeah. So it may have been kill or reloaded. That's what I tried. Didn't change anything. So it could be a language version. So let's see. If I do language version 10, because I changed it before and it didn't show anything. Oh, it does. Okay, so if I use language version 10, now it shows up. Let's retry. Okay, so it's a language version issue. Okay, so if I try 8, for instance, does it do something? Okay, so 8 doesn't show. Does it show at 9? Okay, so that means that we have to bump up the language version. So the warnings start to show up if the language version is 9 or greater. Interesting. So there you go. Half an hour to find that we need to bump up the language version in that project for the warning to appear. So that means that we're probably going to have to change the templates so that we use the right version, at least 9 or something, or 10 maybe. Because and the reason for this to happen is that because we're using Net Standard 2, so we probably should be changing this instead. So use Net 6 or something. So maybe that would be the fix. So change that template to use to use net6. Let's try to do this quickly. We did that last time, and it has shown some warnings, so maybe we're going to be seeing something different there. So last time I tried, it said that the target needs to include Windows. So let's include Windows. And now it says that the generator failed. And that for some reason the generation doesn't work properly. And if I remember correctly, we had some specifics there that that prevented everything to run properly, because on Windows we're assuming that the target is not the right one, and that's something that we can actually fix. And we're probably going to be taking a look at this next week. But the idea is that when you're running with net6 Windows, then it enables something like the use of WPF, and when that happens, there may be conflicts where WPF is going to try to load XAML files as its own, where they're actually WinUI ones. And there's a new property that's available that allows for the compilers to discriminate which one they should be loading. And Uno's not setting those yet, and we probably should be doing this. So, and we can actually take a look at that to see where we can find that. So that build failed. Actually we can't find it at that location, so let's find it differently. So in that case, we have the up-to-date check here. So we're doing the imports as part of the Uno UI Skia WPF project to match all the XAML files so that they're included properly. And in that case, they're not included because we're targeting Windows. And the way we're doing this is through this, if I remember correctly. And there's actually another one. There's a runtime. Oh, we're not doing this here. It's actually in another file, now that I remember correctly. So we're building this as part of this project. And there's a Skia WPF target. And we're doing this here, if I remember correctly. Not it here as well. Single target. So that's not in this one. We have the cross runtime, but that's not the one. Let's take a look at the NuGet file to find this in the output. So if we go to nuget.info, we're going to open the Uno UI package, Uno UI.Skia WPF package, and see what we have inside. Because I don't remember by heart what that was. So we have this one, but that's not the one we're looking for. So in the dependencies, we have Skia Sharp, and we have Uno UI here. So maybe it's in this one. So we have the build transitive here. I'm wondering if we added it here, net5 Windows. So we have analyzers to be removed. Okay, so that's why. So we're doing it here. We're saying if we're in the net5 or later version of Windows or of the target framework for Windows, then we're removing the analyzers because we're expecting that everything's going to fail as a result because the XAML files are not going to be the right ones. And we need to change that to avoid issues with the tagging. So we need to have files to be tagged and included properly with the right it's called the XAML runtime metadata, so that we don't conflict files between each other. So but that's going to be for next week. So there you go. So that's the we found the reason why that one is that issue is happening, and it's because we're not running with the language version high enough. So it needs to be 9 or later. And one of the fixes to use net6, but if we do this, we have to fix the other issue with the analyzers. So now let's go take a look at the playground. So in the playground, just as a reminder, so you don't, when we're talking in the playground, talking about this project, and it allows you to have some XAML on the side here and the output available here. But the problem is that you can't get any C# available in there. And it could be particularly useful to, let's say, create a user control and execute some code in there, and have, let's say, another tab that says, you have XAML here, and then you can have another tab that says C# or code, and then you can write your code and get something running there quickly. So that would be something to change. So let's go take a look at the playground. I think I do have it here. So last time I mentioned that I made another project that's called a C# fiddle, which is actually close to this one, but it's not exactly the same. You can't put your XAML in there. So what we're trying to do is to get the XAML and the C# to cooperate in a sense, and get everything to show up the way we want. So it looks like I don't have the playground here, so let's go and clone it. Platform. I think it's Uno Playground, but I'm not so sure. Maybe it could be Playground altogether. I'm just going to go and validate that. No, it's not Uno Playground. It's definitely something else. Oh, there's a T missing. Okay, so it's Uno Playground for Uno Platform. Okay, so the version that we have here is a version that had a kind of a trim down. It used to be a lot larger. It had a lot of code integrated into. It's not needed anymore. So basically, have some leftover of some content that's not supposed to be there, but that's not particularly interesting. The part that we're looking at is a playground here, and for now, it has most of the code inside and the code behind for now, because it was the fastest route at the time. So for now, we're just going to try to make that work as a fast fast route, so that it shows what we can do. But we can probably just refactor this and make it using view models and probably make it a bit more decoupled from the UI as it is at this point, especially with regards to the fact that we need to have some code running, some code compilation happening inside of the playground. So lots of small things that need to be adjusted for all this to work properly. So let's try to change this. So it looks like I'm getting some application errors for some reason. Do I have a... Oh, load space. That's not fun. Okay, so probably because I have other types of issues. What do I have? Okay, let me do this pretty quickly to see if I do have things that I can remove. I did some fixing a while back. And it looks like I have some missing thing here. Okay, that should be better. Okay, let's see. Let's close this because we don't need it. This as well. And let's go in the playground again. Okay. That I can probably remove as well. Okay, so it didn't, because of the of the space that's missing, it didn't even show me the it didn't update the most recent used versions here. So anyways, let's do this again. So if we rebuild, we can actually run all this. So one of the interesting things that we added in the playground recently is the fact that we can use the Windows Community Toolkit types in there directly. So it makes it easier to, let's say, test for data grid or others. But the problem is that in most cases with the data grid, you need to write a bit of code because it makes it easier to work with. So it's probably one of the first thing that we will be able to test for that. So let's build the playground and see if it runs. So that would be the first thing that we can do. That should be an easy one. And let's see. Yep, that goes well. So this application doesn't have any linker enabled because you can pretty much use anything in there. So if you enable the linker in a playground, then you would get error messages telling you that you can't use something because it's not available. So that's one of the things that we can change now. And see, okay, so let's see if the playground runs properly. It does. Okay, so now what we're going to do is change this at the top so that we can have an additional tab, and then add another Monaco editor so we can have three panes. So let's see. I don't know that code, so we're going to be taking a look at what it looks like. So we have a sample template here that's not useful. We have the toolbar at the top. We have a playground. We have the save button here. Then we have the tabs pane. So we have the code, the splitter, the preview here. We have a radio button. One that says XAML, the second one that says data. And a last one that's in the output that looks like it may not be used. Or it could be something additional that we don't know about. It's probably disabled. So let's add another one and see how far we can go. So I have a code pane here. We have a code editor. So for WebAssembly here, we have the XAML editor here that's hidden. We also have a code box for the XAML text that for not wasm. So that part we can actually remove because we're not running in not wasm. Then we have the data context pane that's available here, which contains a text block. And then we have the preview pane that's for the content that needs to be seen. Okay, that's good. So what we'll do is pretty much add another section for this one. So pretty much duplicate that code pane and have a second code pane. So let's do this. So it's not exactly a code pane. So we're going to be calling the source pane for now because it's going to be a duplicate. So we got a code pane here. So let's fold that one. Let's call it source pane for now. We're going to rename everything else afterwards. Do we have names in here? So we don't have conflicts. So we have a link block here. I'm just going to be commenting this one out for now because it doesn't look like it's used that much. And then we have a source text. That's for the code editor. We can remove the wasm here because we're using WebAssembly completely this time. And we also have to have a radio button, an additional radio button that is going to be in the middle, for instance. And we're going to be using source radio button. Show source. Let's call it C# for now. If we go to the show XAML function in the code behind, what does it do? It does select tab, so we can probably just do show source. I'll be restarting the application. So it looks like, so you see the squigglies here. The interesting thing is that .NET 7 is likely going to be enabling additional hot reload scenarios so that we can change that source and have something that works a lot better. We're getting the .NET to .NET 7 for WebAssembly already, and it's giving very nice results. So we'll see. We probably should be having something to share pretty soon. It's quite interesting. Okay, so C# is not at the right location. You can see here. So it's overriding the other one. Interestingly, it shows at the same place as the other one. So we may need to disable a few tabs. So let's see. Let's see if we use this radio button here. We have the check here. Oh, we have a few things that are done manually here. So let's duplicate for now. We can refactor this afterwards. C#, data context pane. Going to be source radio button. So in this one, we have to do a bit of fiddling because the panes are not the right ones. So we're gonna have to change those. Source, so data context pane is not the one we want. I think it was source pane, if I remember correctly. So we added a new one. So it's source pane. Change the visibility of this one. We want to make that one visible. So I don't think we need to change that one. So probably those are kind of leftovers of things that were not working originally. When you have radio button groups, it's supposed to be doing it properly and show the selection properly. So it's probably not useful at this point, but we're going to change that afterwards. So data, so it's actually source pane that we need to change. Source pane is supposed to be collapsed. Oh, the preview pane was the mobile form factor. Okay, is the mobile form factor, so we don't need it at this point, so we can change that one afterwards. So the source pane needs to be collapsed here, and source pane collapsed here. Okay. And we also need to change the definitions for those at the top. So it's grid row. We have the first button here that's probably not at the right place. We have 0, 0, and 1, which is not good. So we're probably going to be have to do this. So we change the visibility of those, and that should be good enough. We're going to change the visual so that it matches the content. So I wonder, because it looks like it's taking a bit too much time. And I wonder if we have, yes, we do have the linker enabled here. So probably going to be disabling the linker so it builds a bit faster. Okay, great. So we have, that's interesting. We have an output that's shown up, probably because I removed another thing. So there we have the XAML that's not showing anything, probably because the new one that we added on top is not being removed. So let's change this. We have the source pane visibility collapsed. And probably we're changing this at some other location. So probably, oh yeah, because we're not going to that location first. So probably going to be having to set it as collapsed first. Visibility. So it's checked true. So let's set it to false first. Let's see if that changes. Oh, I closed it. It should be building a bit faster now without the linker, because that's the part that takes a bit more time when you're building at the end. If you disable that one, it shows up quickly. So there you go. It's a lot faster. So we're still having this one that's showing up. So let's go take a look at the active tabs and see what's actually active at the top. So we have the code presenter here, and its name is code editor here. Doesn't have any name at that location. So that's interesting. So it doesn't have any name. There should be a property that's called name. So maybe we're missing that one. Okay, so that's not good. Okay, so let's see. So we're changing. Probably could go and debug this. That's going to be easier. So let's see where we're going. So we actually fixed a bug with the debugger recently, where the tab would not be the debugger would not start properly if you had .NET 5 not installed. So it's available in the latest build of the Bootstrapper. And probably I missed in the properties here in the launch JSON. There's probably not enough configuration. So let's add that configuration that's missing. If we actually go there, the docs, search for debug, and you have to add that line. You have to add that line to your configuration here. So right after the launch browser. So that Visual Studio is going to be able to hook onto Visual Studio running, the running Visual Studio. So this time you should be having the breakpoint hitting properly. If it doesn't work, I may have to update the Bootstrapper to the latest version, but we should be seeing this quickly. One of the things that we changed in that version is that all the messages that you see here, yeah, so that's exactly what's happening here. So let's move to a later version of the Bootstrapper so that it'll fix that issue, hopefully. So we have, let's go through 3.3 dev 5. And let's try the debugging again. So you'll see that with the previous version of the Bootstrapper, there were a lot of messages that were going in the output. Now those messages are going to go away. The runtime also has been updated, so that's why it's downloading a newer version of the .NET runtime. Okay, so there are a lot less messages that are happening here. So you can see here just a few that are showing up, and hopefully this should become red. plain red and not the other one. So not happening at this time. So maybe I messed something up. Could be something that we need to debug a bit more. Maybe because the debugger is disabled, could be that as well. Sometimes we have not enabled the debugger. It's a very old version of this. Debugger. No, it's not enabled. That's why. So there's that. This is something that does not happen when you're running a standard Uno application, because it's enabled by default. But in this case, it's not enabled. So we're gonna have to go and find the line that needs to be added, I think, or maybe it was in the documentation. I don't recall. Oh, there it is. You have to ensure that this is there. So mono runtime debugger enabled. So let's add that line. So this has to be disabled in debug. So it's not the case here, but we'll get that. We'll not get that published when we're done with the updates. Okay, so let's try again. Let's see if we can get the debugger to show up. There we go. It's red. Good. So it's going to be hitting if need be. Okay, so we're hitting the pane, and what's the value of pane here? Let's see. So it says XAML. The hot reload is having issues. Okay, so I can't go forward because it has issues. Okay, so not going to be particularly useful. So what we know here is that we're getting to that tab. So let's see, we can go to the log output and see what we get. So we get to, so we have this log going to tab, and going to tab should be somewhere in there. Oh, yes, and the logging is disabled in that case, so we need to enable it back. So if we go to the app.xaml, the logging is disabled by default. It's set to something relatively high. So WebAssembly console provider. Let's go for debug for now. See if the logging's enabled. Yes, so this one is an older version again of Uno, so we need to change that one as well. So we're missing one line. So let's go and add that line. So that we can find in the solution template. So let's pick that one up. So we're missing this line that initializes the logging, otherwise nothing shows up. Here we go. So this version of Visual Studio is an older one. I haven't tried with 17.2 to see if the hot reload has improved. It said that hot reload has improved, so let's hope it's going to get better. Okay, so if we have the go to, we have a few unhandled exceptions, interestingly. So we don't have the going to. So the going to is not displayed for some reason. So more debugging more debugging has appeared, but not happening in that case. We have the warning, some warnings that are happening. Could it be because we're in Uno? Yeah, that's correct. We're in Uno, so that's the reason that happens. So we need to change Uno UI demo. That's why it's not happening. Let's try it again. Going to this time, maybe not. Yeah, going to tab output. Okay. And a few error messages that are showing up. So it says going to tab XAML, going to tab C#, but in this case, it's not showing up. So let's see what we can do. Let's say if we remove the, we can do some manipulations here to see if the behavior is the right one. So if we remove, for instance, the code presenter here and see if we can have if we have another one that shows up below. We've seen multiple times that for some of the code editor, sometimes the visibility of the items below, or the filling of the code editor doesn't work because there are two in the same application. So maybe that's the issue that I don't know. So we may have to do some tricks there to change between one and the other. So if that's the case, let's try to figure that one out. So it may be that the text, the source pane, for instance, here. So the Monaco editor that we add here is interfering with the other. So let's see. If we remove that one. Oh, that shouldn't have done that. Okay, so we have some content. And I just removed the other Monaco editor. So that would mean that if we have two Monaco editors, then they're interfering with each other. So that's not good. So that may be the first thing that we need to fix is, are we we should be able to have two versions of the same control at the same two versions of the control at the same time. And that's not the case here. They're interfering with each other. So we're going to have to fix this first. And I would say we could do something like swapping. Let's say, the text is here, and when I change the tab, then the selection goes away. But the problem is that if I do that, then we may have issues where we're losing selection and losing cursor position and scrolling. So that would not be that would not be a good experience. So probably going to have to fix that first. So we can take a look at that next week and see what we can find, because otherwise it's going to be difficult to have both tabs available at the same time. So I hope it was a Salut Fabien. Yeah, so it's a bit different. So we're going to have to find out why we can't have two Monaco editors at the same time. And it's something that we handle ourselves. So it may be something that, we're just assuming that the control is the same for everything. And or maybe it's a bug underneath in the Monaco editor. So we'll see what happens there. So I hope you had some fun and found out a few things about Uno, especially in the first part. I did. It was about trying to find what kind of source narration issues we were having. So that was interesting. And so that's it. Until then, happy coding, and see you next week. Bye for now.